speaking of basketball, the NBA is going to resume, or so it seems, at the end of July in Orlando. We'll talk about that and also about the NFL and about sports in general. Is an outstanding journalist, award-winning journalist who, of course, grew up here in the New Orleans area, LSU graduate, and you've seen her for many years, whether it's on local television anchoring or, of course, on national television on Fox NFL broadcasts and as the sideline reporter for New Orleans Pelicans game. It's great to welcome my friend Jennifer Hale to the broadcast. Jennifer, listen, thank you. I hope you're well in these very unusual times.
Hi there, Ken. Thanks so much for having me. It is awesome to hear your voice. And, all's well here. Just, like everybody, just waiting to see what develops next with COVID, hoping we don't get a second wave.
You travel so much. I'm patently aware of your schedule. I'm a friend and I'm an admirer of what you do. And I know how much you travel. You live out of a suitcase frequently. I used to do that. And then I got smart or got stupid, one of the two, but I did it. Having said that, when was the last traveling that you did? Was it with the Pelicans or did you do it outside of the Pelicans?
No, it would have been with the Pelicans coming back that night in March from Sacramento. That would be the last time I had that big old suitcase and was going cross country for work. And, Ken, to the travel aspect, gosh, I do live out of a suitcase. I certainly spend more days on the road than I do at home, and I love it. But you either love it or hate it. It certainly does get old for some people, different stages of life.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I remember I was in 14 cities in 22 days, one time in 1996, and they wrote about it in a couple of publications, including a local newspaper. And I really didn't know where I was at times. I was doing Saints play-by-play in the preseason for radio, and I was the third person on the broadcasts in the regular season, which meant I was at training camp, and that was in La Crosse, Wisconsin at the time, as well as at all the games. And then at the same time, I was a play-by-play voice for the New Orleans Zephyrs. And as you know, baseball, that's 144 games.
Ooh.
And traveling all over the world in the Pacific Coast League, literally, and at training camp as well. So I was gone probably in the vicinity of 140 to 160 days a year, which would equate to 40 to 50% of the year. And I think when you're younger and aspiring and aggressive and full of energy, it's a great thing. And then at some point, I probably hit the wall a little bit. So I'm not so much disturbed about not traveling as much anymore.
Baseball's a different animal. 82 regular season NBA games, I'm good with. I don't know how players and media doing baseball do all those games. That is a tremendous endeavor.
It really is. It's a grind. You have to love it. The only good thing about baseball is you're in one place for 3 or 4 days because of the series that take place. So that part of it certainly doesn't hurt. Before we talk about the Pelicans, NBA, and the NFL, let's talk about you briefly too. You've been in my prayers for a few years now. For people that weren't aware, you had a very serious health issue, an incident that dealt with your very existence, and it pertained to your heart. Talk about that. Just share it briefly and where you are now with regard to that.
Ken, you've always been so supportive, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your prayers. They certainly have been working. It's really been a miracle for me. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with something called dilated cardiomyopathy, which basically means the left side of my heart had stretched way out, and it was big and floppy. So if you think of a rubber band, your heart being like a rubber band, and it pumps the blood through your body by snapping back and forth. Well, it had gotten so big and floppy that it couldn't snap back to pump the blood. So I was down to 16% heart function when I was finally diagnosed. And normally it's about a 5-year life expectancy. In certain cases, medication will work. Other cases, folks can get on the transplant list. And then in other cases, there's just nothing that can be done. So I am so blessed and lucky to be in that group that medication is working for. And I know God has a bigger plan for me. And I certainly want to put all of the extra time he is giving me here to good use.
Was it something that drew you closer to faith, to your faith after this occurred? I guess we're all sort of like that with our own humanity and mortality, and we tend to draw closer to God, draw closer to our faith when we have these kind of incidents.
Absolutely. It was obviously an emotional thing. One of the things that made it so difficult was the medication doesn't work quickly. It's a little bit like chemotherapy in that sense. They said it would take 1.5 years to 2.5 years to know if the medication would be effective. Excuse me. So, I went ahead and did all the paperwork and all the tests to get on the transplant list and was ready to go with that in case the medication did not work. And that was a very long, really 2 years and a quarter, 2 years and change before my heart got to the point where they said, okay, we're going to take you off the transplant list. The medication is working well enough. And in the beginning, I told God, I can handle any of the three scenarios, but I need to know. I can't live with the unknown. That'll drive me insane. And of course, I just had to live with it. He taught me patience and taught me trust. And so, yes, that most definitely strengthened my faith, because that was really something in the beginning. I just thought, I don't know that I can do this. I don't know that I can put one foot in front of the other, not knowing that much unknown in my life for 2 years. And somehow he gave me the mental strength to do it.
No question. Listen, I'm with you 1,000% with the reaction, the perception, and being thankful. Visiting with Jen Hale, and let's talk a little bit about sports now, and blessings continue to you, by the way. With regard to the Pelicans, you're welcome. I guess you won't be making that trip to Orlando, or would you, based upon the restrictions?
If they would let me go, I would absolutely go. From a medical standpoint, I'm not really at any greater risk because my heart is now functioning in a normal level. If I was still in that 2-year period where my heart was weaker, I would be more high risk. But now, thankfully, I'm not considered part of that high risk group. But Ken, we're waiting to find out if the NBA is going to allow media, team reporters, how that's going to work. We still don't know. The last thing we heard is that they were leaning against it, and that we would probably be here at home in New Orleans doing the games from studio. I certainly think that will be the case for the play-by-play and the analysts. And we will, all of us sideline reporters, we probably text each other every other day. Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? So it's just kind of a waiting game right now. I'm actually doing something called the basketball tournament on ESPN at the beginning of July. And it's really fun. It's the Elam ending, a $1 million prize, a lot of your favorite alums from colleges across the U.S. And it was a question, would I do it from a remote studio or could I go to where the tournament is? And they really just decided 3 days ago to let me go to Columbus, Ohio, and be there present on site for the games. But I have to go 5 days early in quarantine, take 3 different COVID tests, and pass the ball. And then we will be pretty strictly quarantined between the hotel, which they've rented out fully for all of us involved with the tournament, players, coaches, media, and the arena where it'll be held. So it's interesting times. It'll certainly be the most unique competition, the most unique game setting I've ever had.
No doubt. And, oh, by the way, don't let any of the Buckeyes tell you that they would have fared better against the Tigers in the national championship game.
Oh, I'm ready for that fight, Ken. Don't worry.
Jen Hale with us. So with regard to the Pelicans and getting this opportunity, I guess first and foremost, there's still that concern from some of the players about the safety issues, and understandably so. This could really blow up in the league's face if some of these guys decide they're not going to go to the bubble in Orlando.
A lot of decisions need to be made, absolutely. And then, of course, if you have to go in quarantine ahead of time, can families come? Just so many question marks and so much potentially life-altering consequences. And you mentioned the older coaches. I have not heard of any player or coach yet who has said, I am not going to go. But certainly I've heard from plenty of players who they're turning it over in their minds. They want to get back to playing the game. They feel like basketball would be great not only for them personally, but for the country as a whole. They want to see their friends. But, yeah, it's a question of, wow, is this the right decision long term? How safely can we do this? right? Everybody says, oh, I'm ready to play when it's safe. How do we know, quote unquote, when it's safe? I don't know that we can know that. I think we're going to have to go with best chances it's safe, and different people will have different comfort levels with that.
Then there's Alvin Gentry. And, of course, I wrote for CrescentCitySports.com this morning about the fact that I believe Coach Gentry deserves every opportunity and every right to be there on the sideline coaching his team. I know he's 65. I know that the senior citizen aspect of this has been the hardest hit with the most deaths, but he wants to do it. And I think he deserves every right to be able to do that. And the same is true of Mike D'Antoni and of Greg Popovich. Isn't at some point, or shouldn't it at some point, be the choice of said individuals to make that determination about what they want to do and how they live their lives?
Personally, I sure think so, Ken. I would want that decision. I would sign whatever waiver or disclosure that I would need to go. Yeah, I think each person has to decide what's best for them, what's right for them. You'd ask me about my heart at the beginning of this conversation. That was certainly different type of circumstances, but in some respects there were mutual parallels to this decision. When I decided to go to work, initially they wanted me to take 6 months off and do bed rest for 6 months, and I just decided that wasn't best for me. If I laid around for 6 months staring at the ceiling, I would convince myself I felt sick. And I'm glad I got to make that choice. And so similarly, I hope these coaches get to make it for themselves as well, especially since it isn't as if they would be giving it to other people. It would be more a danger of them getting it. It's their decision. They're not endangering anyone else. And, goodness, I would recommend not telling Alvin to his face, calling Alvin to his face a senior citizen. He would certainly enjoy debating that one with you.
No question. I like him. I've always liked him. I think he's a good man.
Oh, he's the best. He's the best.
And I think he gets blistered and crushed way too much with regard to his coaching ability. And as I've said forever and a day, you're only as good as the players around you. I think every coach would tell you that. When Alvin had players, he went to the Conference Championship Series with the Suns, losing to the world champion Lakers, who were better. When he had players in New Orleans, they won 48 games and swept Portland in a playoff series before losing to Golden State. When people say they've underperformed, nobody was going to beat Golden State that year under any circumstances, and nobody was going to beat the Lakers when he lost there as the Suns, and he hasn't had those types of teams. This year's different because there's young talent and there's a good veteran presence, but not having Zion for over half a season, not having Derek Favors for an extended period of time, having an injured Lonzo Ball trying to play, certainly impacted them, because if you look at what they've done since they started 7-23, they've gone 21-13. And with Zion, they've gone 11-9. So I think what you're seeing over the last few months is more reflective of the team and of the coach than what you saw early in the season.
No doubt, Ken. They won 21 of their last 34. They certainly turned a corner. Before Zion came back, the defense really started clicking. They figured out how to make that Jeff Bzdelic system work. I think coaches and players melded and came together on that one. And then once Zion came back January 22nd, boy, that was just like the power boost shot in the arm. The connection he developed was so fast. It was mind-boggling. I've never seen that type of chemistry able to evolve so quickly for two players that have never played together. I'm excited to see this Pelican squad in this tournament in Orlando. I think they're really going to surprise some people. They're young. They are eager to prove themselves. They're eager to leave their marks. You have a lot of guys with chips on their shoulder, and I mean that in the best way possible. B.I. and Zoe and Josh coming from L.A., they want to prove that they can play with the big boys, and that the decision for L.A. to part ways with them was a mistake on L.A.'s part. And B.I. especially just seems to love New Orleans and the staff, and he's just adopted the city. I think they're going to play with a ton of passion, and they're going to really be a force to contend with. And they need to be, because, shoot, if you want to make that play-in tournament, if you want to jump up and snag that 8th spot away from Memphis, you're going to have to win a lot of games.
Well, it's a fun young team to watch that's youthful, that's talented, that's likable, good attitudes. And then there's the really solid veteran presence. You've got Ejuan Moore, but you also have J.J. Redick, Derek Favors, and Drew Holiday. And if you're going to have a veteran presence with a young team, these are the perfect guys to have because they've handled it extremely well, which is why this team did not make any moves at the trade deadline. Turning our attention to the NFL, of course, you work Fox broadcast for the league as well. You don't get a chance to work many Saints games because you're pretty much sent all over the place, but it certainly appears that New Orleans, the Saints, are a legit contender again with the team they're about to put on the field this year.
Absolutely, Ken. And I have to think that this lack of an off season is only going to help veteran teams like the Saints, or at least hurt them less than it hurts other teams, help them in that respect. I think a lot of these new coaches, new quarterbacks, lots of rookie players, I think that's going to be a real struggle. But with the leadership the Saints have and all the returning pieces they have, I think that's going to give them a huge step up over a lot of the other contenders. And I cannot wait for that Week 1 game versus Tampa. Not only do I want to see Tom Brady and Gronk and how Tampa and Bruce Arians plan to use them, but I'm really curious to watch what Sean Payton does with his quarterback chess pieces here. Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. Sean Payton is just sitting there rubbing his hands with all the creative and different genius strategies and schemes he could dream up. It's going to be a very fun team to watch, an effective team to watch. Drew has plenty of weapons. And then you've got those other two quarterbacks that you can roll in. We've heard you're probably going to see 3 active quarterbacks most game days. So I think the Saints are definitely going to not only contend, but be one of the more fun teams to follow and watch. Even if you're not a Saints fan, I think they're going to capture a lot of eyeballs across the country.
The most important question is this. Okay, NFL games, unlike NBA, you're outside. So you're subject to the elements. You look at the forecast. You prepare accordingly based upon how you dress. I mean, look, this is not a sexist comment at all, but you're a very attractive, beautiful woman. People would appreciate your appearance. How do you maintain that? What's your secret with the makeup? How do you dress and prepare for bad weather when you got to be outdoors dealing with this situation for NFL games? What's the secret? What do you do?
I don't think I have a secret figured out, except come prepared. My teammates and my broadcast mates will laugh at me because so often I have 2 huge suitcases with me for road trips because when football and basketball cross, a lot of times I'll be on the road for 2 weeks. And, we all know weather forecasts can change with a day or two's notice. So I got to bring all the rain stuff. If I'm anywhere up north, all the snow stuff. I'm a Southern girl. I have Southern blood. I'm cold when it's 50, let alone 20 or 10 outside. So I've got the heated boots, the heated vest, the heated gloves, all of it. Haul it with you and hang on. I live and die by hand warmers, and now they have these great things. It's a huge hand warmer, and it's supposed to be for back pain, but it's a great little heating pad, basically. And so I'll put one on the front and one on the back. And I'm ready to roll.
Now we know. See that? The inside story. And I'd be remiss not to ask you about your reaction, your feelings to watching this past LSU football season unfold and how it unfolded, the unbelievable season that this team put forth, your alma mater. It had to be pretty special for you.
Ken, it was amazing. Obviously, took me back to the days in 03 and 07. All 3 such special years. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to any of the LSU games this year. That is the biggest downfall of my job. There aren't many. It's a pretty perfect, amazing job. About the only one I could say is no more college football because I get to the city with my NFL game usually the Friday before. So they were all viewed from television. The night they won the national championship, we were in Indiana. And the crew was so sweet, they set up 2 monitors for me because the Pelicans were playing, and they won. And so the Pelicans game was happening at the same time as the LSU game. I know no one probably knows that because they were all watching the LSU game. So I was watching both games simultaneously, trying not to shirk my duties as the Pelicans sideline reporter, but also watch those Tigers. It was just awesome. And Joe Burrow's story, it kind of reminds you to some extent of Drew Brees' story, how he found new life, new redemption after a trying time with one team, was able to find that second chance in Louisiana. And then, man, that Heisman speech, that's something I will always remember. His presence, his social awareness, that he would use that time to highlight and bring awareness to issues about poverty and hunger. I think it affected so many people, and I look forward to seeing what he does with an even larger spotlight as he goes forward in the NFL with the Bengals.
Last thought, if you had to pick one thing that you enjoy the most, I know you do the dog show, you do the TBT, you do the Pelicans, you do the NFL, and I know I'm missing some along the way. Is there any one thing that you absolutely positively enjoy the most?
I couldn't pick one. That's like asking someone to pick a favorite child or a favorite restaurant here in New Orleans. I will say the dog show is only once a year. That's the only one I do is Westminster. I'm not a dog expert by any means, but that is such a unique, fun event. And I learn so much. I get to play with puppies for a whole week. It's awesome. It's a great change of pace. I look so forward to it every year.
Well, you can, of course, check her out on Twitter, and she's very easy to follow. Jen Hale 504 is her handle. That's Jen Hale 504. And, of course, just watch and follow. We hope you get the opportunity to do Pelicans games, regardless of whether it's in Orlando, in a studio, or beyond. We thoroughly enjoy them and look forward to seeing what happens with the NFL season as well. Jennifer, listen, thank you so much for the time. God bless you. Stay safe. I'm glad to hear that prayers are answered, but you know what? We're going to continue praying for you anyway. You're a class act and a great friend. God bless you.
I will take all the prayers you will give me, Ken. Thank you so much, and thoughts and prayers just for everyone's safety right now and peace in our country. It's a lot of tough conversations are happening, and hopefully we'll see some good change, but also hopefully we'll see some peacefulness. I know a lot of people are very anxious right now, and it is certainly at the top of my prayer list.
Amen to that. Jen, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ken. Have a great weekend.